Welcome to another episode of the Paradigm 132 podcast, and I am your humble and gracious host, Rashad Horn. Now, on today's episode, it's that book again. We're going to be talking about discrimination and disparities. What I'm doing with this in the next couple of podcasts is I'm going to be extracting information from this particular book and doing podcasts about them. Talking points that I don't necessarily feel are readily, I'm not going to say readily available or even readily accessible. I'm just going to say readily spoken about in the context of the greater scheme, because one of the things that I notice is that it's a lot of one-sided information that's put out there. Now, I spoke about that on my last podcast when we talked about numbers and how if they're not utilized and put in a proper context, you can get away with certain things, right? I can put numbers out there, but if I don't give the context and if I don't dig deeper into the numbers, then I can say whatever, and I can get people to subscribe to that without further asking any more questions, because understandably, they know the individuals may or may not ask more questions based on if they feel that the person that's giving them information is smarter than them, right? You don't necessarily question people. That's one of the issues that I've heard is going on college campuses, where you have students that want to question professors about certain ideologies, and instead of embracing that, most professors will feel threatened and may feel that you are making it difficult for them to continue on their job, right? So that's a problem. But anyway, there's 4 words that we use and they're interchangeable. And sometimes we use them out of context based on our understanding of the word, right? And those 4 words are discrimination, racist, bigot, and prejudice, right? All 4 words are interchangeable. All 4 words roughly have the same definition, but there are differences, right? There are differences. Dr. Soul, however, took it another step. He took the word discrimination and he gave it 4 separate definitions. He gave it 4. Now, he has discrimination 1. He has discrimination 2. He also has discrimination 1A and discrimination 1B. And I'm going to talk about that. And then towards the end of this particular podcast, I'm going to talk about one of the things that I feel like I've spoken about in the past, but I want to talk about it again because it's another aspect to it that he presented. And that particular talking point is about businesses in areas that may be poor or maybe riddled with crime and other things like that. So I'm going to talk about that towards the end and add in the little nugget, the little tidbit that he added just to expound on what I had already spoken about, right? So these are the definitions for each. So discrimination 1, he labels or he defines as an ability to discern differences in the qualities of people and things and choosing accordingly, right? Discrimination 2, he says, is narrower, but is more commonly used. And that is defined by treating people negatively based on arbitrary aversions or animosities to individuals of a particular race or sex. Now, what was so interesting about discrimination 1 is that we all practice discrimination 1. We all do. An example of discrimination 1, basically, and I'm gonna give it from two talking points. I'm gonna use a personal example, right? So we all know if we're black, if we see a person, a white person, or even if we see a black person, just if we see anybody with a "Make America Great" hat on again, right? That in today's terms, or that in today's climate, is equivalent to a person with a Confederate flag, right? So, personal example. I can't remember the state, but I was delivering a load, and I got out of the truck to unstrap and everything, and one of the guys there had on a "Make America Great Again" hat. My antennas went up. My antennas went up. I was on the phone, and I told the person I was on the phone with, I said, man, this guy got a "Make America Great Again" hat on out here. Now, before I know it, I had already stereotyped you, right? I did not practice the ability to discern differences in your qualities. I automatically put you in that bubble, right? Before I even said good morning, before you even said or uttered one particular word, I had already put you over there, right? And so now I don't know again if you were just doing this or if you just felt you wanted to kind of break the ice or whatever. But the guy, he came up, he spoke. Other two guys unloaded the truck. We sat there, had a conversation. They bring up politics. Now, one particular time, talked about the truck, talked about where I was headed after that, all that good stuff like that. And right then and there, at least for that particular moment, I felt like, well, you know what? Maybe I could say that you feel that you understand some of the other talking points that Donald Trump has when he talks about "Make America Great Again." Maybe you understand what he talked about certain trade deals and about certain deficits and about a multitude of other particular different things. Maybe you understood that, and maybe you didn't necessarily like Trump as a particular person, but you got behind him and are wearing the paraphilia or the memorabilia or the stuff like that. You're wearing it because you're saying, look, I believe in this message, right? I believe in this message. I don't care about all the other little stuff, blah, 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 right? The same thing goes with someone wearing, a Confederate flag. Antennas go up. You may actually feel like that, this is heritage. This ain't got nothing to do with hate. I don't believe in that. I believe in the flag. I don't believe in all the things, the representation that it was used for. I believe that it actually stood for this, right? Fine. I'm not going to jump on you. Role reversal. You see me, and you see this on my head, and you automatically think, oh my goodness, Nation of Islam, doesn't like white people, feels like the white man is the devil and all this particular stuff like this and blah, blah, blah. You judge me. You haven't said two words to me. You haven't asked me why I'm wearing this. You haven't asked me what I believe. You haven't asked me how I think about particular things like that. You go ahead and you stereotype me, you judge me, you put me in the group. And can I get mad at you? Maybe. But again, if I am presenting myself like this, and this is either way, I got two options. I can either be the person that you think that I am, or I can be the exact opposite. I just have a belief system in certain aspects, right? But everybody practices that, right? I don't know if it's human nature or if it's just something that is taught, right? So someone can say it's taught. Some people can say it's birth. I don't know. didn't do a deep dive, right? So what's interesting now we're moving on to discrimination 1A and discrimination 1B. And this is interesting because, again, like I say, one of the things that we hear about is the discrimination and hiring practices amongst African Americans and things like that. And Dr. Soul also in some of his speeches and talking points spoke about how, like, teenagers, they represent the highest number of unemployment for African Americans. So that's quite interesting, right? And he talks about minimum wage in this book as well. So we're gonna do an episode about that as well. But discrimination 1A and discrimination 1B. So the example that he used was discussing the idea of, well, I'll just read it. I'll read it. He states that a real-life example of the effect of the cost of knowledge in this context is a study which showed that despite the reluctance of many employers to hire young black males because a significant proportion of them have had criminal records, those particular employers who automatically did criminal background checks on all their employees tended to hire more young black males than did other employers. So basically, he said, in other words, where the nature of the work made criminal background checks worth the cost for all employees, it was no longer necessary to use group data to assess whether individual young black applicants had a criminal background. Now, what's interesting and what's key about that, right? All of this falls underneath discrimination 1. All of this falls underneath the aspect of Dr. King saying, judge a man by the content of his character, right? We don't have to go into the color of his skin, but judge a man by the content of his character. But when we have situations, when we have employers and we have businesses and things like that are using group data, using group statistics, and putting groups of people together to figure out whether or not we should hire you, it's not fair. It's not right. You're exhibiting discrimination 1, but in Dr. Soul's case, you're exhibiting either discrimination 1A or discrimination 1B. So this is the difference between discrimination 1A and discrimination 1B. He says the ideal and more costly variation is seeking and paying the cost for information that will permit judging each individual as an individual regardless of the group from which that individual comes. This is what we can call discrimination 1A. Discrimination 1B is in other cases where such information is too costly to be worth it, individuals may be judged by empirical evidence on the group they are a part of, right? So, certain businesses, what they do is they'll contract out a firm, like a talent agency or something, like that. And what we have is like the EOE, equal opportunity employer. We see all that particular stuff like that. Other different, groups and stuff like that try to make sure that, there's equality and diversity and hiring practices and all that good stuff like that. And what ends up happening is they'll lay that on their lap, right? They'll hire them and say, well, you know what? Hey, the cost of hiring them is cheaper than us putting in an entire department of people here to go through applicants, right? So that's what y'all do, so we'll pay y'all to do that. And so what ends up happening is, and if you're in the background noise, I'm sorry, right? But if you're in the background noise, right? But what ends up happening is they're tasked with going through applications, because we're paying you to go through each and every applicant. We're not paying you to use group analysis or group data, right? So in the aspect of young black males, we're not paying you to use the group data of saying, well, hey, young black males may be more prone to having criminal backgrounds, so we're just not going to hire them, right? Based on the group data, which again, as he stated, is discrimination 1B. However, if we do go and we do seek out this particular information and we feel like, well, hey, everything checked out, but we're still, we may have found a better applicant or whatever the situation is, then, there's discrimination 1A, right? But he's saying that neither one of these should classify as discrimination 2, because I'm not discriminating against you because of your race or because of your sex. I've done my due diligence. I just did not want to hire you, right? But again, as he says, we just say discrimination, and we're not doing as he's doing, which is defining it differently and putting it into two different sections. We're just saying, hey, it's discrimination, right? So one of the things that he also mentioned in this particular book is that in the situation where there are businesses that may have prospects of bringing jobs or bringing opportunities to areas where there's a high concentration of African Americans, a lot of businesses get hesitant. And the reason for the hesitancy is because of discrimination lawsuits, employment discrimination lawsuits. And when I read that, I said, man, that's messed up. It's messed up. And the reason I said it's messed up because it's twofold, right? A lot of times in the areas where, African Americans are the largest concentration of people, obviously the education level may not be up to par. So that can also play a pivotal role in certain businesses and stuff deciding to come there. And then if they do decide to come there, they're not going to necessarily hire a lot of people from that particular area because you don't have the qualifications for it. And sometimes the risk far outweighs the reward by putting a business there, because what ends up happening sometimes, again, is you put a business there, obviously the property value of the areas around is going to go up. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to price the residents that already live there, you're going to price them out of their homes. And by pricing them out of their homes, obviously that's what we got today, which is what we call, what is the word? The word escapes me right now. What is that word? Gentrification, right? We got gentrification coming in because we got businesses that are coming in and bringing up the property value, and people are not able to budget because they're already basically up to the limit, and now the property taxes are going up. I can't live here anymore. So people are coming in, swooping it up, getting those particular jobs and stuff like that, right? So in a lot of instances, that's what we see now, right? We see that now, even though politicians should have the community's best interests at heart and say that, well, hey, we need you to hire X amount of people, right? I'm not in any of these particular meetings. I don't know if they're saying, hey, you need to hire these particular people and these people need to be in executive positions, which I don't know if you can make a stance like that if a person just does not have the qualifications, right? But you may just say, well, we just need to hire some people, right? And those people are going to be hired, and based on the skill level and based on the attributes that they have, they're going to be positioned accordingly. And if they end up being positioned as maybe janitors or down the totem pole workers, that's what the politicians did to get that particular business there and say, well, hey, look, we brought jobs here, even though a lot of you don't have the qualifications to get said jobs, right? So that's That's quite interesting, you know, when you break stuff down like that, right? So, um, like I said in the second part of this podcast, I want to talk about businesses that are operating in, you know, black neighborhoods and areas, low income areas like that. And one of the things that I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard as well, is that these particular businesses come to black areas and they extract wealth away from the black community because they charge more. We even see situations where black people have businesses and they charge more for their services and for their products than other places. And generally speaking, some of them may be doing it on purpose by way of being greed, and then others are doing it because of the simple fact that the cost of products is so much and I do not get the same discount as the big store down the street. I have to charge this, right? So one of the things that I touched on in one of my previous podcasts, when the whole mantra coalition, the whole battle cry was no justice, no peace, burn it down, burn it all down. I think back to a story I heard from Neely Fuller when he talked about the LA riots and how at the conclusion of the riots, there was one store left that wasn't burnt down. It was the grocery store. And he talked about how the line was just so long out of the door because that was the only store left. And after everyone had got their tension, you know, for burning stuff, you know, looting and all this particular stuff like this, you got this one store left. And what little products that they have in the store, that's all they got. Because no trucks are going to be in a rush to come to an area that just, let's just say a week ago, was a war zone. Right? A war zone. And then you get another problem that arises. We don't have any more. I see someone pushing a buggy that has in that buggy what it is that I want. I'm going to come take it from you. Right? I didn't practice discernment to say, wait a minute, when all this is over, what are we going to do? Right? So, one of the things about these particular businesses is he talked about how obviously they charge more. Now, based on some work that I've done in the past, I noticed that certain places that I would deliver products to, you have a printout of the invoice. You have to print out the invoice for them and stuff like that. And I would notice that at some of the smaller stores in some of the areas that weren't as prominent as some of the other places that I delivered to, the discount wasn't as large, right? And what ends up happening with that, and you can even look at the price of the stuff that they're selling, it's a little bit more than the price that you may go and get it at a Walmart or a Dollar General or something like that. So what ends up happening a lot of these particular times is obviously when you are opening a business or you open up a storefront and stuff like that, if you have the credit, if you have the cachet, you know, you're gonna go to the bank and you're gonna ask the bank, hey, I need X amount of money, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do this. And the bank is not in the business to lose money. Point blank period. When a bank lends out money, they're expecting to get that money back, get that principal back, along with obviously interest on top of it. And so when you present them with a business opportunity to lend money for said building or said store, whatever it is, they're gonna want to know, hey, well, where are you putting this at, right? So they're gonna go do that. They're gonna look at the area, and they may think to themselves like, oh man, they're putting this. Didn't they just have a riot over here a couple of months ago? They want to put a store there. So obviously, the propensity for violence, the propensity for rioting is there. It's always there. Just like with flood insurance or something. It could have never flooded in that area for like it flooded one time, boom. Gotta get flood insurance. Gotta get flood insurance. The bank is not gonna let you get this house if it's in a flood zone unless you got that flood insurance, because again, they're not in the business to lose money. Now, you're taking on that particular risk. Insurance companies know you're taking on that particular risk. You as the person that's investing back in there, you know that you're taking on that particular risk. Now, obviously, depending on the status or the stature of what it is that you're putting there, you may can get some tax abatement and stuff like that from local politicians and stuff. If you're going that far up the ladder, if you're doing all that particular stuff like this, and that tax abatement may help you with a lot of these particular costs, but you're still going to offset some of your costs back onto the particular consumer. You're not going to go head to head with Walmart. You're not. You're going to go head to head with Dollar General. Just not going to do that. That's one of the things that he talked about in his book that, supermarkets did. They took away the small guy, the mom and pop. They took it away because they can sell stuff at a cheaper rate. They just can do it, right? So that's the aspect that he added on to it, right? Is that the insurance aspect, which I talked about that the insurance as well, but he expounded on a little bit more. The insurance aspect, as well as the aspect of them being in an area that's poor and has a propensity for crime, the investor, which is the person that's opening up the storefront, they're taking on all of these factors, all these particular variables. They're taking on all this, and they have to roll that particular cost back off to the consumer. And if they don't price it the correct way, they're going to price themselves out of business. And while we look at the price and say, oh man, you're charging $1 for this and it's 50 cents over there. They're charging 50 cents. The person over here is charging $1, but the business that's charging 50 cents at the end of the month, they're making a higher profit margin. They have a higher profit margin than the business that's selling it for $1. Simply because the risk for them to operate a new business there is greater, and they're also not getting the same discount that other business, that larger business, is getting. So those particular things are at play. Now, is it fair? I don't know. But if I'm a person that's investing, I think it is fair. Because I feel like if I'm investing and I want to put something here in a community or in the area that I grew up in, I have to understand that these particular things are going to come with it, right? I have to understand that maybe there may be a situation where someone comes in and they rob the store. Not gunpoint, but like they steal merchandise from me, right? So there's extra money. I have to put up extra cameras and all this particular stuff like this. All of this stuff is eating into my budget. So I have to get quotes for each and every one of these particular items. I have to do that. I have to do all this stuff even before I even think about giving individuals opportunities to come in and work. I have to add up all of the cost. The cost of lost merchandise, the cost of the insurance in this particular area, the cost of not getting such a big discount on stuff, on the orders of stuff that I do. All these particular things I have to take into consideration when I think about opening a business in an area that is less prosperous. I have to take all that into consideration. And I'm not going to make the same profit that I'm going to make as another area unless there's a situation comes in, which, again, it's a bad word, gentrification. If gentrification comes in, then maybe after that, the profit margins, I have a better profit, right? And I may get a bigger discount because I might get the insurance may go down because they'll look at this and say, okay, well, some of the negative factors that were affecting you when you first started, those particular factors are no longer there, right? And like I said, Lord forbid, if I'm in an area that had a riot, another one happens, I might well board it up. Because I already know that my premium is going through the roof And if I'm already getting by on nickels and dimes and quarters and stuff like that, that's the loss that I took for trying to do something, right? So, that's kind of what that is, right? So, to give a prequel of what I'm going to talk about next week's podcast. In this book again, Dr. Soul spoke about the migration of Southern blacks to the North, right, and the ramifications that occurred with that particular thing. So I'm going to talk about that, and what's kind of interesting about that is, again, this is a particular talking point that I never heard, right? Growing up, just heard about a lot of Southern blacks, went to the North because there were more opportunities. However, Dr. Soul takes it a step further by saying, well, some of those Southern blacks that came to the North to integrate into that particular system up there, they brought a lot of that emotion, a lot of that disdain, a lot of that hatred for some of the conditions that were going on in the South. They brought that to the North, and in certain instances, the northern blacks didn't have that same disdain, right? Because they had already been integrated into that system, because again, they were the minority. So now you're moving into a situation where there's a multitude of other blacks that are coming up there, and they have a different mindset about stuff. And I think a lot of this stuff still plays apparent to this day, where I feel like a lot of northern blacks look at Southerners as being backwards, so I still see that at play today. And so I'm going to talk about that. Some interesting legislations that he talked about that were passed prior to Southern blacks coming to the North that were quite interesting, that I had never heard about before. So like I said, I'm going to do my research and make sure that I provide you with information that is important. So this is another episode of the Paradigm 132 podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe. And if you're listening to this on one of your digital streaming platforms, come over to YouTube, like and subscribe the Paradigm 132 podcast page. Peace.